A warm welcome to everyone from CENTA. Uh, we are CENTA, the Center for Teacher Accreditation, and what we do is we aim to make teaching aspirational. Today and for the upcoming 2 Mondays, CENTA, with their learning partner STIS, is going to conduct a series of 4 webinars, of which the first part has already been conducted, and we are here for the second part of it. It is part of their field action project called the School Initiative for Mental Health Advocacy, or SIMHA. The objective of this series is to build capacity among teachers to address unique challenges that arise during adolescence with students. Today's webinar is on navigating the storm, understanding and nurturing emotional development in adolescence, and it will be conducted by our wonderful faculty, Ms. Bhavna Sharma and Ms. Ketki Vengasarkar. Ms. Bhavna is the program coordinator for SIMHA. She currently serves as the ethics committee member at the Indian Council of Medical Research and is in the official advisory board for Harvard Medical School as a research fellow. She's also completed her master's in applied psychology and MA in social work from TIS. She's finished her undergraduation from Miranda House, DU. She's been working in the mental health field for the past 9 years, and she's worked previously as a mental health consultant for Azim Premji Foundation, Jindal Steelworks, Aditya Birla Chemicals, and many others. Also, Ms. Ketki is a counseling psychologist who has completed a master's in lifespan counseling from St. Xavier's, Bombay. She's passionate about building capacities to prevent mental health concerns and improve well-being. She's worked as a counselor to provide individual therapy for concerns such as anxiety, depression, OCD, eating disorders across age groups. She's also conducted workshops and trainings for teachers, students, parents, police officials, NGO staffs, etc. Participants, welcome to this very enriching session. We would request you to write in your names and your institute name so that we can talk with you. And please do type in any questions that you would have during the session. We will have 10 minutes scheduled at the end specifically for question and answers with the faculty. And before I hand over the session to the facilitators, I would like to inform that you all will get a record of participation at the end of the session. So please do fill the feedback form in order to get your record of participation. So join us as we delve into the emotional world of adolescence, and let's learn how teachers can be the guiding light and how they can foster emotional well-being and resilience in students. Over to you, Ms. Bhavna, Ms. Ketki.
Thank you so much, Shiksha, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really looking forward to today's session with all of you. Last week, we had a wonderful, very interactive session on physical development, the challenges, and some strategies that teachers can use to support adolescents in that phase. Today, we'll be covering emotional development, and then the next 2 Mondays will be social development and cognitive development as well. And I hope you all stick along and join us for those for the journey as well. So today, what is our agenda today? We will be briefly discussing what emotional development is like in adolescence. What are emotions? What do they look like? How are they different for adolescents than maybe children or adults? Then we'll be moving on to some of the challenges that come along with emotional development. And then I think the most important part, which is what can we do as teachers? How can we support the emotional development of adolescents? And then, as it was mentioned, we'll keep around 10 to 15 minutes for question and answers. Hopefully, clear some doubts in as well. So I'll invite Bhavna in, and maybe we can just do a quick check-in with the entire gang.
Thank you, Ketki, and thank you, Siksha, for the lovely introduction. We'll start with a brief check-in with our participants. If you can just type in the chat box, we're going to ask you, how are you feeling today? And if not today, how are you feeling now? We'll be able to see the responses, right?
Yes, they should show up in the comments.
Right.
It can be any feeling word. It could be whatever you're experiencing right now. For example,
Feeling.
I am feeling excited. I am excited to be here. Yeah, Sangeeta has responded that she feels great. Oh,
Great.
Anuradha as well is feeling great.
Someone's feeling
Okay.
overwhelmed.
Yeah, that can be tough.
Mhm. If I'm to check in, maybe I'm feeling nervous. Kamala says she's feeling very happy.
Enthusiastic, good.
Great. Should we? All right, so we'll take it a step ahead. And maybe if you can see the wheel that is being displayed on the slide. And if you can check in with the wheel and tell us how are you feeling. We'll just take a minute. And if at all you're able to identify feelings that you were not able to really sort of access when we asked you the question previously, do you think there's any change? Someone says she's curious. How about you, Ketki? Are you able to see something different on this wheel?
Mm, give me a second. I think excited is this. I think I'll stick with excited.
Great. Someone had said overwhelmed, which shows in the surprise element of this wheel. Someone's feeling happy.
Grateful.
Someone's eager to
Eager
move
to
ahead.
move ahead. I
Should we
love
take that
the
as
I
a
love the
sign?
passion.
Great. Ketki, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So I'll go ahead and jump into what are emotions, right? We all just gave some responses. We said good, we said great, but we then also turned to some emotion words, right? So curious, overwhelmed, excited, peaceful, grateful, right? So all of these are emotion words. But what are emotions? So, very simply put, emotions are reactions to events or experiences that we might be having. And these are a subjective experience, so they differ from person to person. They have a physiological response to it. So there is changes in our body that accompany these emotions, and there are behavioral response. So the way we act with association with these emotions, right? So for example, if you're going to watch a horror movie, right? We're going to watch a horror movie. What could be the subjective experience? What could be the emotion that a person is feeling, right? So someone might say that I am scared, I am shaking in my boots, I'm terrified, right? Someone might say I'm excited, I love horror movies, I'm going to have such a great time. So it's the same thing. It's watching a horror movie, but someone is feeling excited, someone is feeling ready to watch it, while someone else is scared, nervous, you know. The physiological response of watching a horror movie, what do you think might be happening? Do you think, someone's heart is racing? Do you think someone is maybe having sweaty palms? Maybe someone is fidgeting around in their movie seat waiting for the movie to start. So there are all of these bodily changes happening as well, right? And then the behavioral response. So I know when I'm watching a horror movie, I just like, when there's a scary part coming up, I just like, okay, tell me when it's over, tell me when it's over. So and that's my behavioral response to it, right? Some people, they might be at the edge of their seat. Okay, this is what's happening. So these are emotions, and we all experience them in different ways. But today we're going to specifically go into adolescents and what they experience, right? So let's go ahead. And Bhavna, you want to come in?
Yeah. Thank you, Ketki, for setting the tone so well. I'm going to take this opportunity to largely talk about and briefly introduce the concept of emotional development in adolescence. In the previous webinar, my colleagues had spoken about largely the physiological changes that take place in this phase of life. In fact, that's the very foundation that also leads to this development that happens alongside. Now, adolescence is a very exciting overwhelming phase of life, right? Emotionally, more so, because there's so much of change that an adolescent is going through. So much of change, and often questioning themselves: whether do I fit in terms of my peer group? How do I look? How do I appear? And in recent times, it's also a lot to do with their presence in social media and how is it that they grapple with all of those complex social realities that are very much a part of their life, right? The one of the major changes that comes about in adolescence because of the physiological changes that's going on is they're able to now experience a very wide range of emotions, much like the wheel that we introduced in the beginning of the session. Now, what really happens is, now these emotions can be very overwhelming for them to grapple with because it's new, it's a change that they're going through. Also, it's important to notice that the brain is still developing. It hasn't developed completely. So the important word here as teachers it's important to be mindful of the fact that it's still developing. It's almost like they've been handed down part of the recipe, some of the ingredients, but they don't have all the ingredients in their hand to sort of understand how is it that they navigate this particular phase, right? And which is why I think it becomes very important to provide them the support that they need to cope through this difficult period in their life. Next slide, please. Right. So because of this changes that they're experiencing emotionally, it's also very important for them. It's one of the important milestones, in fact, in this developmental phase for them to learn how to navigate these difficult emotions, which can be like anger, frustration, shame, sadness. Another important concept to note in this phase is the concept of externalization and internalization, which actually means that some of the students, if you would notice in your class who are adolescents, they may externalize these difficult emotions that they're going through, right? That means they may act out behaviorally. They may shout, they may be temperamental, they may be rebellious, or some of them may also internalize. That means that they isolate themselves, they close down, they shut down, right? So I think as teachers, when you have an understanding of these concepts, it helps you better address the situations in your classroom. Next slide, please. As we talk about emotional development, one of the most important skill that an adolescent is expected to develop in this phase would be that of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is the ability, I think we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. Now, what really is emotional regulation, right? Emotional regulation is, let's say, one of the missing ingredients that I spoke about previously. It's an ingredient that really helps you navigate the so-called storm of this phase of life. It is our ability to stay really present, engaged, and listen to each other despite the difficulties that we experience, the distress that we experience within. Emotional regulation as a skill can be understood as a range. If Ketki can help me go to the next slide, I would use the window of tolerance concept to explain this better. When you're thinking about emotional regulation, one of the most important concepts to learn about is window of tolerance. Now, what really is window of tolerance? All of us as individuals have different windows of tolerance. For some of us, it can be really slim. For some of us, it can be broader. So it's important to check in within ourselves, or in fact, teach your students to check in within themselves. Where are they placed in this window of tolerance, right? Now, the two extremes of this window of tolerance is the state of hyperarousal versus hypoarousal. In both these states, you have to be mindful of the fact that the person, if you are hyperaroused or hypoaroused, you're not emotionally regulated, as opposed to being in the window of tolerance. So if you teach your students or yourself as adults to check in and understand whether at all you are in the window of tolerance or not, it can be sort of a sign for you to understand that now it's time to take a break, right? Now, what happens very quickly, just to sort of help you understand this, in the state of hyperarousal, we tend to be very anxious, we tend to be nervous, our breathing can be shallow, fast. Sometimes it can happen while we're giving the presentation, or it could happen just before the exams. As opposed to this, in hyperarousal mode, the person tends to be tired and sort of, isolates themselves, doesn't want to engage much. When you spot this, it is time to actually take a break, right? And also for you as teachers, if you watch the adolescent go through this, in fact, it's important to check in and then allow them scope for breaks in that moment of time. Go to the next slide. Now, adolescence is not just about the negative effect or distress, right? It also comes along with a lot of advantages, and which is why emotional development is such an important part of the lifespan development. If a child or an adolescent growing up is able to navigate these emotional turmoils in a healthy way, with the support of adults around them, it leads to them becoming more independent. They're able to relate to their peer group with greater empathy. They're also able to perceive, assess, and manage their own emotions better. They're able to be more present for their friends, for their family members, for their siblings, for that matter. And it's also a very important part of life, a phase of life, wherein they can develop a sense of emotional literacy. That is sort of, learn the language that helps them to convey their emotions better. One of a very important the concept in this phase is that of co-rumination, which, as per research, says is more found in the females growing up in this stage, which means they're able to sit down together and actually ruminate or talk about negative experiences that they go through individually, right? And that can either lead to stress, or it can also sort of help them feel or sort of de-stress, right? Because there's sharing taking place. So it can go both ways. I think next slide, please. I now invite Ketki to take us to the challenges associated with this phase.
Thank you so much, Bhavana. And I think one of the key points that I will stress upon again is that it doesn't have to be all bad. I know there's a lot of like the storms and the stress of adolescence and the big emotions and the strong emotions that we will also talk about now. But there are also really good parts of being an adolescent with these emotions, because you're empathizing, you're understanding, and you're connecting. And we will also see next week when we talk about social development, about how these emotions can be so crucial, how this empathy can be so crucial in creating connections with each other. So now let's just look at some of the challenges that come with this emotional development, right? Because it's like just carrying on what Bhavna said, that there is that ingredient of regulation that is missing, and hence that can create some challenges that come in between, and that is dealing with rapid mood fluctuation, right? The ups and downs, the highs and lows of emotions, increased conflict. So this could be with peers, this could be with classmates, this could be with parents, close friends as well. And the emotional toll of stress, just the stressful events that are occurring and how their body is dealing with it. Are they hyper aroused, are they under aroused, right? So all of those events and how it's impacting their emotions and their bodies as well. So, looking at rapid fluctuation in mood, we now understand that they are experiencing a wide range of emotions. So, previously, whereas might have only had few emotional words like happy, sad, angry, now it's becoming frustrated. I am enraged. I am, maybe in envy. So, it's such a wide range of emotions that they are experiencing, and just as you can see in the image, right? It's like a roller coaster. It's like 1 minute I'm feeling okay, but then something happens and suddenly I am upset. I was feeling okay when I woke up, but then my breakfast wasn't made exactly how I imagined it, and now my rest of my day is ruined. So these swings can happen, and it can be really difficult to adjust to these swings, right? Because imagine not feeling in control of your emotions. You know what's happening, but you're not feeling great about what's happening as well. And something that might be difficult is to express these emotions in a socially appropriate manner. There are no emotions that are bad. Even emotions that we call negative, right, like anger or sadness, that we don't want, are important, right? We need those emotions. They're there for a reason, but they need to be expressed in a way that keeps us safe, right? So if I'm in the classroom and I'm angry, I need to be able to talk maybe calmly, assertively with my teacher or with my friend about what is happening. But because it can be so intense, and if I just end up exploding in rage, if I end up throwing something, if I end up breaking something, that could be harmful to me, it could be harmful to other people in my class as well, right? So the appropriateness of expression becomes important. And like I said, this fluctuating emotion can be confusing and distressing, not only for the adolescents but for people around them, right? So even parents might be confused. I said this to support my child. I gave them advice because I want them to do better, but they just got upset with me, right? So it could be difficult to navigate these moods and emotions that come along with the way. There is increased conflict. So, like we mentioned, there is increased ability to recognize social cues, recognize emotions of other people. However, it's possible that some of these cues get misunderstood. So, I misread the expression on someone else's face, and then I, assign the wrong emotion that they are experiencing. And hence, I feel like, okay, man, now my friend is upset at me, and then, or I feel like, someone is out to get me. And then again, is this idea that okay, all of this is happening, but I can't express my emotions well. I'm not communicating well. There is also rumination and anxiety. So rumination is a word that Bhavana brought up before. So a lot of thinking, right? Ruminate. Just I'm sitting and I'm thinking and I'm thinking and I'm thinking. I'm coming up with all of these different, situations and ways for me to, talk about this. How I'll bring this up and then I'll show them, what I'm really feeling. So all of this thinking and anxiety and all of these thoughts are happening as well. And that rumination can be good at times, but if the rumination is kind of leading you towards a path of um, overthinking or misunderstanding some situations, that can be harmful as well. And yeah, so again, the conflict could arise because we adolescents can be impulsive and reactive due to these heightened response emotions. And finally, the emotional toll of stress. So adolescence is a pretty stressful period with relationships changing, academics changing, a lot of key examinations are happening at that age, a lot of career oriented decisions are happening at that age. Adolescence is also age where you actually need more sleep, but somehow the schedule doesn't allow you to sleep, and that can be more stressful as well. You're having all of these important decisions that you have to make, and you're not exactly sure about what you want to do. um, and all of this is kind of exaggerated by the hormones and the neurobiology of that age, right? So I think last time as well we spoke about stress hormones and how these hormones and these reaction patterns might kick in faster and stronger for adolescents in comparison to adults. So the stress response might be slower and less intense for adults versus adolescents just due to the hormones. Even the neurobiology, right? So something like the amygdala, which is in charge of emotions like fear and um, could be a lot more active for adolescents. Likewise, there are a lot more increased demands. So you end up expecting more from yourself. You expect yourself to do more. And there are also expectations from the people around you to be more mature, to be more independent, to take charge. You should start studying by yourself. You should start going to all of your classes by yourself. And that can be stressful as well. And finally, in this age group, it there is a tendency, even when you're feeling stressed, to kind of try and solve it by yourself, because you want that privacy, you want to be independent, so you don't want to share all of this emotional burden with anyone else, and you want to do it all by yourself, which it's good. It can help in increasing problem solving skills, but everyone needs some support, right? Everyone needs some kind of someone to kind of take the burden off of them. And that might be a skill that adolescents need to be taught or encouraged to still use, that it's not bad to ask for support, it's not bad to seek out help as well. So these are some of the challenges that come in. And now we'll be looking at what can teachers do, right? What can we do to promote emotional development and prevent any other problems that come in.
All right. Thank you, Ketki, for helping us understand the challenges so well. And I think I completely resonate when I mean, having been an adolescent myself at some point in time, when you spoke about especially the part wherein an adolescent sometimes can try to deal with all of it by themselves. And I think that is exactly where our roles as adults becomes very important to make them feel supported. Um, and I think before we get into the strategies, right, I'm also wondering that it must be it's not easy for an adolescent to sort of figure it all out, because there's also a strong sense of identity that they're trying to create in this developmental phase, a sense of autonomy, wherein they're wanting to move away from the family, and they want to spend more time with friends, right? The friends become a bigger part of their reality. So I think we need to acknowledge all these factors that come into play. It's a big world that they become a part of, and they want to sail through the entire storm. All right. Looks like we've come to the interesting part in terms of us talking about some of the actionable steps that teachers can take at their level to make the children or the adolescents feel more supported. We'll go to the first slide in this. All right. I'm going to ask a quick question to our participants. What do you see? What do you notice here in these two pictures? Some quick responses, brief responses. I hope you're able to see it clearly. What is the common thing that you notice in both the pictures? Happiness. Parents are equally involved in the activity. Okay. Caring. Enjoying together, happy mood. Mm-hmm. All right. Age difference. I think that's, yeah, there's an important element there. We'll try to tie it all together. All right. Thank you for your responses. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. I'm going to be supporting them, giving them experience of caring, right? So I'll start off from there, right? When we talk about teachers are one of the most important social protective factors for adolescents, right? Because there's so much of time they're going to be spending with teachers and also in the school environment. So I'm going to be using the analogy of swimming when it comes to understanding the role of a teacher. As you saw in the previous pictures, there was a lifeguard, a trainer trying to teach the children how to swim. There was an element of care, support, their presence, right? So swimming is a skill that has to be practiced in water, right? Much like emotion regulation that we spoke about, emotion regulation as a skill, even if taught, has to be practiced when you're distressed. Now, clearly, you can't learn how to swim unless you get into water. Similarly, the adolescent has to go through the distressing experiences of this particular phase. But it becomes much easier for this adolescent to swim in this water or get into the swimming pool if somewhere they know that there's someone present, an adult, right, who will be there to rescue them should there be trouble. Similarly, this is an analogy that the lifeguards analogy can be applied to the teacher adolescent relationship in this phase. Like I said, they are one of the most important social protective factors. Their supportive presence, their listening presence actually permits safe opportunities for the adolescents to develop certain new skills, emotion regulation skills in this particular phase of life. It helps them to navigate the different peer group relationships that they're part of, sometimes romantic relationships that don't work out, sometimes the difficulties of academic experiences, and so much more. I think we'll go to the next slide. There's also a sense of safety, security, and belongingness actually that can develop in an adolescent if the teacher is able to provide them with that safe space. We'll start with talking about what generally teachers can do, and then we'll go on to talk to you guys about some very interesting skills that you can take back today with all of you that you can also practice in your classrooms. So teachers, while engaging with the students, can actually create emotionally safe spaces within the classroom or in some place in the school wherein the students can actually sort of take a break. Remember, I spoke about the window of tolerance. So whenever they are feeling that they are hyper aroused or hyper aroused, you can actually encourage them to go to this emotionally safe space, which can be a corner in the classroom, which can have certain things that can help them relax, colors, or maybe certain stress balls that can be kept there, right? Other thing that teachers can do is to encourage expression. Now, here the important skill that the teachers need to bring in would be that of non-judgmental attitude, wherein they are able to offer that anonymity to the student who comes and reaches out to them. Also, help them build emotional literacy. That is, help them develop a language which will assist them in conveying what they're feeling, right? Most of the time, they're not aware. They know physiologically or physically they're going through something. There's so much anger, but they don't know the exact emotion that they're going through. So this vocabulary will help them convey that information, right? Also, I think it's important as teachers for us to psychoeducate ourselves and understand some of the first signs and symptoms that may be indicative of mental health concerns, and also sort of bring this narrative in your classroom that it is okay to be not okay, right? You don't always have to be performing at your best level, and try and not see the adolescents from the lenses of just an adult, because their responses to circumstances can be very different from our responses to the same event, right? And I think most importantly, it's also important for all the teachers to prioritize your own mental health, so that it's much like, when you are taking the flight, they tell you you have to wear your own mask before you help the co-passenger put on the mask. So similarly, take care of yourself before so that you can be best available for the students. Go to the next slide. So I think I've covered some of it. I think one important element that I missed out would be, you can also consider inviting experts, wherein you sort of acknowledge that this is okay. I've been there, I've done my first line intervention as a teacher, and now it's beyond my zone. So invite mental health professionals in your classroom who can talk about these certain mental health skills that can be imparted to the students. Next slide, please. Right. So now, moving from the general, we're going to be leaving all of you with some useful emotional regulation techniques that can be used that can be taught to the students in your class. And the silver lining is it can be practiced as adults as well. We'll go to the next slide. All right. We start off with the first, simplest yet the most effective skill called breathing technique, right? I've titled it as "Come Back to Your Breath" because breathing is something that helps us feel very anchored when you're feeling extremely distressed or overwhelmed. Now you must be like, Bhavna, we are all breathing, what's so special about breathing? But you realize that the kind of breath we take is not very regulated most of the times, especially when we are distressed. So breathing, if you're learning how to regulate your breath, how does it help you? It helps you calm your nervous system. It helps you activate something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is very important in helping you feel more regulated. And then you're able to respond to the circumstances better rather than impulsively, right? Rather than snapping or sort of shouting. It helps you buy that time. I've displayed 3 different interesting ways in which you can teach breathing techniques to your students. I'll just probably introduce one of them to you. In fact, I encourage you to do it along with me, Kiki, if you could also, if you're interested in following. I want you to take a moment and just sit wherever you are comfortably. We'll start with the first one. It's called the butterfly tapping technique, which I've found that works very well with kids. Here, what you're asked to do is you interlock your thumbs like the wings of the butterfly and you place it on your chest. The idea is to rest your back, right? Just rest your back and just sit comfortably wherever you are. And I want you to slowly start taking few deep breaths, few deep inhalations, but also keep tapping the palm over your chest as you do that. The idea is to inhale slowly and try and exhale through your mouth. It's called diaphragmatic breathing because it's deeper. It might be uncomfortable right now. It may also feel a little weird as you do it, but it's completely okay. The idea is to bring in the practice slowly into your own life. This particular technique allows you to just switch off for a moment from the overwhelming episode. It makes you feel more centered and come back to your breath, right? Similarly, you can also use the lazy 8 breathing. We can always share the resources if you want later. I hope we have the scope for that. And the other one that you can use is the analogy of the flower and a leaf. Basically tell your students, when you breathe in, pretend you're smelling a flower, and you breathe out, you pretend you're blowing a leaf, much like that, right? All right, so we'll go to the next one.
I think, the best thing about breathing exercises is that it can be kind of adjusted for different age groups, right? So, for example, the lazy 8 breathing might be more suitable for like an adolescent who is maybe a little older. While if there's a younger adolescent who you feel like, needs more creativity, who needs a little more play into something like this, there is the flower and the leaf. There's also pretending like you're holding a balloon and you're breathing and you're kind of exhaling and making the balloon grow bigger and bigger. And so it's really up to you to think about, okay, how do I make this more fun and engaging? to help regulate emotions as well. So we'll now go ahead into some simple grounding practices, right? So what is grounding? Grounding is a soothing skill, right? It's a soothing skill that can be helpful to kind of come down from intense emotions, when you're feeling stressed or you're feeling upset. This is something that can bring you back to the here and now, right? Because something that happens when we're stressed or worried or upset is that we either go back to the past or we rush ahead to the future, right? And then grounding kind of says, okay, forget about what has happened. Don't think about what is going to happen. Come back to the here and now. Be present. Be now. And these are some different cues that you can give to the student to be grounded. This can even be done with the entire class. Just tell them to sit. Even right now you can just try pressing your feet on the floor. So these are all cues that use different textures or different temperatures around you, using the environment around you to notice the feeling and the sensations on in your body. So pressing your feet on the floor, just noticing the hardness, noticing, if you're not wearing slippers, noticing is that, if is the ground cold, is it warm, is there a rug beneath your feet, so noticing all of those different sensations. If you have certain material around you, for example, I have this Vaseline, so holding that item and exploring what are the things I'm noticing when I touch it. So I might notice all of the ridges, right? I might notice, okay, this is Vaseline imprinted in here and it's a little dug in to the lid. I'm noticing that this part is a little cooler, right? So I'm noticing textures and I'm noticing the temperatures. So students might also benefit from having a certain object in their hand, like a bubble wrap or a fidget toy. If needed, the child can be allowed to step out of class and engage with this material for some time before coming back in. um, Something I know that a lot of teachers also practices is that, okay, go wash your face, right? Just go splash some water on your face and then come back. So intuitively we are already using these things. We're using temperature, we're using these sensations to be more present. And lastly, even something like a soft object, so again, the touch and the sensation can be really important to regulate yourself, to calm yourself down. Some other ways to ground can be to just visually notice things and to categorize objects into different sections, to scribble, to color, using building material to build something, or even counting. So just count the number of cars that are going on the road, count the number of trees that we have. Again, coming back to where you are and what your environment is like. And if all else fails, there are always orienting questions. So these are questions again aimed to make the student aware of where they are right now. So it helps them, become, again, come back to the present. They need to be asked in a calm and gentle manner. And just again, so it could be, okay, where are we right now? um, what's happened, like what are you noticing, in this room? Are you comfortable? What are, maybe can you tell me the number of books that you see on the table right here? So simple questions that orient them, bring them back to where they are. So all of these are different grounding techniques, and you can keep them in your toolkit and use them as and when you need to help a student regulate in your classroom. All right, Bhavna.
Yeah, thank you, Kirki. And I think grounding is extremely important. And I think it has also helped me personally as an adult, especially when I'm feeling all over the place, just the idea of coming back to the here and now. Uh, and all the practices that you spoke about really allows you to sort of, snap out of that and come back to the here and now, which I think is the most important thing to do. There's something that just coming to my mind, and before I forget it, I think as teachers, sometimes we are also very, very as adults, actually, whenever adolescents sort of reaches out to us, the first thing we want to do is we want to provide them with solutions. But in reality, if you actually pause and reflect, most of them are not looking for solutions. They're actually looking for sort of a space for space that allows them to express. And all you need to do is probably just listen and then, introduce these activities to them that also sort of empowers them to take care of themselves in that moment, right? Just another interesting activity that you could use in your classroom is called the emotion thermometer or the emotional thermometer. Here, you need to start by asking the students to draw a thermometer shape in the notebook. You as teachers could sort of help them, guide them by drawing that on the board. Now, as the next step, what you need to do is you need to ask them, what emotion are they feeling? You can also use the emotions or the feelings wheel, which is easily available on the internet. You can ask them to sort of spot the emotion that they're feeling on the wheel. Is it happiness, sadness, anger, frustration? Now, once they're able to identify it, just ask them to write that emotion below the thermometer, right? Now, once they've done that, as a next step, what you do is you ask them to think about how strongly are they feeling that emotion. Let's say if it's happiness or let's say anger, ask them, if they notice that the emotion is not strong enough, ask them to color just the base of the thermometer, right? The green portion. If some of them notice that, okay, it's somewhere in the mid range, it's there, not a lot, but there, ask them to color till the mid range of the thermometer. If some of them say it's a lot, I'm very angry right now, so ask them to color the entire thermometer. And let this be a very experiential sort of activity for them. You don't have to ask them to rush through it. Ask them to sort of really watch themselves and their emotions while they're doing it, right? Now, as the next step, what you need to do is once they're done with this activity, you need to bring in some reflective questions as teachers, right? You need to ask them, how are you feeling? Are you comfortable going through this emotion? Let them respond. Just sort of, wait for the response. As a next step, you can add another question. What could you do to help you come out of this emotion, right? What would make you feel better? Let them come up with the responses, and you can also support them by giving certain ideas that can help them. And you can end this discussion by letting the students know, like I think Ketki had told previously, that no emotion is right or wrong. Yeah, no emotion is good or bad. These are just feelings which are very natural for them to go through. And as a next step, what you can do is you can also tell them that the only good or bad thing is, or the healthy or unhealthy part is the way you express them. All right. Go to the next slide.
Yes. Okay. So, other ways that we can acknowledge emotions and work with emotions is through media, right? So, these are some wonderful storybooks, that tackle emotions in different ways. These are really helpful to introduce students to different emotion words, and that it kind of normalizes having these different emotions as well. It also can help students to kind of identify, okay, this is what my body is going through, or this is what I'm experiencing in the moment. So this is another example that we have, right? So you can see joy, you can see care, you can see shame. So all of these different emotions are represented with simple descriptions. And this can even be an activity that you give in the class. Okay, we'll read this book today and we'll do a reflective exercise on emotions. So let's write a small essay on emotions, or we'll write what emotion you feel like right now. So it can be used to kind of discuss emotions in a non-attacking manner as well. Another really really good way to work with emotions is kind of creating a plan, right? So this is something that professionals can do with students. And so if you have a student who maybe is attending counseling, or you have a school counselor, this is something you can discuss with them, that okay, my this student has shown again and again that they struggle with this emotion, with anger maybe as an emotion, and I want to support them. What can I do, or what can we do to work together to tackle these different levels of emotions? So then it helps to kind of say, okay, this is the emotion, these are the levels of emotion. That okay, sometimes my drawing back to the emotion thermometer, that okay, today my anger is at a 3, so I just need to do a few deep breaths and I'll calm down. Today my anger is at a 7. What can I do when my anger is at a 7? I can take a break, I can go wash my face, I can come back, I can write about what I'm feeling angry about. So it's planning in advance, knowing that okay, these are emotions that might come up, this is what it looks like when I have this emotion, and this is what we can do to tackle that emotion, right? So it's creating a strategy not only for the student, but also you are kind of aware, okay, this is what the student needs support with. You can give them reminders, you can give them cues, okay, you're at this level anger, okay, why don't we try this, right? So this can be really helpful as a strategy. And lastly, it's building an emotional vocabulary. Harsha, we this is emotional vocabulary is essentially just knowing the words, right? Knowing the labels and the knowing all the vocabulary related to emotions. A lot of times, students may only know good, bad, sad, angry, but there are so many more words out there. So if you look at the link that has been sent on the chat, um, it you can go to it and let's see what kind of emotional words that we can come up with, right? Harsha, I'm going to share, like, shift to the Menti screen for a minute. You should be able to give in responses for all of these different emotion words. What are some
Yes,
emotions
it's
that, yes, we already
it's coming.
have different words coming in?
Fabulous.
So again, so even using technology like this, right? So sending a Menti link to your students and saying, okay, just write all of the emotion words you can think of right now. If this is the situation, what could a person be feeling? So that can also create just a wide range of responses, getting to know that, okay, even if I feel this way in this situation, someone else might be feeling another way. So technology, there are also Padlet, which is another wonderful website. Maybe we'll use it in another lecture to again facilitate conversations on um, emotions and build that vocabulary. It's so wonderful to see all of these responses come in.
Yeah.
Okay, I think with that, we will pause the session, and I think we'll be open to taking questions, um, and we'll try and share this, this slide with you as well after the session.
Thank you, Ketki. Thank you, Bhavna. That was wonderful. And I can already see a lot of people asking questions even when the session was going on. But let me just start by saying what I found really interesting was the techniques like the emotional thermometer or the emotional wheel. And what I'm concretely taking back is that while we usually say adolescents as one category of students that we cater to, they are actually so different. So young adolescents are so different from those that are nearing maybe adulthood, and techniques for each of them might differ. And for very long, we've said that the mind of a teenager is like a black box; you cannot get into it. But I think webinars like these help us understand what goes on behind that black box and how do we probably support it. So participants, I would request you to start typing in your questions in the comment section that you can see on YouTube. Meanwhile, there were two questions that had come up while we were doing the session. So I'm just going to read out those and one by one, and we can take those. So someone had asked that adolescents sometimes tend to become rebellious and are unable to understand maybe the counter side or the positive side of things. So how do you, in that case, support them through seeing what might be coming out of probably that kind of a negative emotional storm that they are going through?
Kitki, you want to take this? Or I'll just start and I think Kitki can also
Go
join
ahead,
in.
I'll add
All
in.
right. All right, Shiksha, thank you for sharing the question. I think being rebellious is such a sort of synonym for this. It's synonymous with this age group, right? It's also because I think so. I think the question is about how do you address this as a teacher.
Yeah.
I think the rebelliousness is, or rebellion is more of a behavioral sort of symptom of what's going on internally. It's their inability to express it in any other way, which makes them probably rebel, right? So I think as a teacher, as the first step would be to notice that yes, rebellion is coming about. It might be that they are outside the window of tolerance. They might be in the hyper arousal state, which is why you sort of pause. You tell them that you give them your time. You sort of speak to them. You give them your listening space. Check in with them what's going on, but also be aware that you might have to be within your window of tolerance when you're talking to this child who may be acting rebellious, and sort of give them that listening space. Listen to them. I think that's the first most important step, right? Kitki, would you like to add in something to this?
No, I definitely agree. I think the best way is to I would say the best way is to try and find a win-win solution. So somewhere where they win, but you also win. So trying to find that middle ground. However, knowing that isn't always possible, there has to be some clarity about rules and boundaries, and this is where the line is drawn sometimes, and that's just how the way it is. But continuing to empathize with them along the way, acknowledging that yes, it is difficult, or that yes, you understand where they're coming from, but still this is the way it's going to be sometimes. I think that's all I have to add.
Yeah, and I do want to add one thing, that what for adults is rebellion might just be a normal, everyday kind of, like a knee-jerk reaction for an adult, for an adolescent. And so our definitions will also differ for what an adolescent considers rebellion, what an adult considers rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
actually,
I think
there also
sometimes
needs to be. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and sometimes not just setting boundaries, but explaining why those boundaries are necessary. So
Yeah,
adolescents are just a little grown up children, and with children, when you say no, it doesn't work, but when you explain why it's so, I think it helps. So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and
I
also
just wanted to
appreciating
go
also
ahead. Go
also
ahead.
appreciating, if they are expressing their emotion, appreciating it, that is something that takes courage, and to express their opinion and have a
Yeah.
stance on something.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to add very quickly. I think rebellion is a behavior that comes about because the adolescent is feeling controlled. So the opposite of control is nurturing, right? So if you want the adolescent to confirm, I don't want, if at all you want them to come up with a more confirming. When I say confirm, it would mean, listen to you or just be more regulated. You might have to be more nurturing as an adult. Present, make your nurturing presence felt for the adolescent and make them feel supported with boundaries. I feel that was a very important point that Kate had put forward. I think boundaries are essentially important in this. I mean, it's very essential in this phase.
Right. One of the next questions was that how do we manage our own emotions while also helping adolescents at home or school regulate their emotions? So, how do you really work on your own mental health and your own emotional regulation as a teacher?
That's a really, really good question. So this requires like a really good base that's created. So um, regularly and consistently practicing self-care, not only when you're feeling burnt out or tired or stressed, but every day, it has to be a part of your schedule. Because when you have that good base of self-care and rest, you will have greater capacity to hold other people's emotions, right? So that becomes really crucial when you're trying to manage your emotions. Also, I think just the breathing, right? So noticing whether you're breathing okay, keeping in touch with your own body when having a conversation, noticing are you increasing, having these physiological changes. And breathing can help with a lot of that, in navigating your own emotions as well. Noticing, is my tone starting to becoming, a louder, am I talking faster, and then intentionally trying to slow down. So all of these physiological ways to regulate yourself can also help managing your own emotions. Bhavna, anything to add?
Yeah, I think you've covered the most important points because self care is so important, but also understanding because I think teachers are also so pressured in terms of the demands that, academic demands that they keep up with. It's important to firstly start off with the basic skills that some of them we have introduced already. But I think it's also important to sort of accept if you feel none of this is helping and it's time to seek out professional mental health help. I think we encourage you to do that, right? Access help when you feel it's just out of control, nothing else is happening. I think that's a very important. You're not weak if you access help, mental health, from a mental health professional. In fact, being vulnerable makes you stronger. Just the ability to reach out and say, hey, you know what, I think it's time, I need a professional help. It's the strongest thing that you can do.
No, that was great. In fact, I think we need as adults also, we need people telling us, hey, it's okay to take a breather, ask for help. So that was great. One more question. I think that's more to do with a kind of an extreme, maybe a behavioral response is addiction. So the question was on mobile addiction, but I would open it up to other forms of addiction. So adolescents do tend to fall into addictions, maybe of substances or even phone or screens. How do we as teachers handle those if we come across adolescents who having an addictive response to an experience?
Okay, I'll start off responding to this. I think I'm not too sure if we have the scope to talk about this today, because it's a very broad topic, and there might be a lot of. It's a very nuanced sort of problem, and may require an entire discussion in itself. But I think it's important, firstly, to notice as teachers that something like this is happening if you're noticing addictive behavior, because I encourage all of you to read a little more on addiction from the psychological point of view if you have access to material, because you'll notice that addiction is again a behavioral symptom only. There's so much more that lies behind the addiction. Sometimes we say it's lack of connection somewhere else in your life that makes you sort of escape through substance. It could be mobile, it could be anything, right? So I think it's a very, very broad area to talk about, but I think I would say firstly just notice that it's happening. Talk to the child, I mean talk to the adolescent. Sorry, I'm using the term child, I need to come back to adolescence. So talk to them, listen to them, be present. And I think we all, the solutions don't have to be so complex all the time. I encourage you to at least do the first line intervention, right? That is, give that space to the adolescent, talk to them, be available. And you may also realize that there's so much more that goes on in their world. Yeah. If you would like
Yeah,
to
I
add
think
something.
addiction is so complicated because it's this cycle of pain and pleasure that keeps continuing on, and it's very very difficult to break. Not only for adolescents but even for adults, it's such a difficult thing to cope up with. But yeah, I think having that conversation, saying that I'm noticing this about you, I'm noticing that this is different, and addiction is also something that needs a lot of commitment from the individual as well to change, because it is painful, it is very difficult to break the cycle of addiction. So supporting them until they feel even ready to take that step, acknowledge, saying that I'm here for you in the way you need me to be there, can be very very important.
Yeah. And just one last point to that, I think it'll be good if you don't address the behavior of addiction directly with the adolescent, because it may make them shut down and not talk to you at all, right? Because they might feel again confronted, which they may not like. So I think the idea is to check in with them generally about how they are feeling. That can be a good starting point.
Thank you. That was great. In fact, a lot of these things that we've discussed are whole bunch of topics on their own that need to do like that need a lot of more time and study to do justice to. But these are good starting points, even for conversations. I'm sure all of us who've joined today have learned strategies and techniques that we can concretely take back to the classroom and start implementing tomorrow onwards. So I think thank you so much, Ketki. Thank you, Bhavna, for sharing these insights. And to all the participants, I would like to say that we're going to have the part 3 of this webinar series next Monday, which is called Building Connections. It's all about fostering social development in adolescence, and we will be continuing these conversations. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Ketki. Thank you, Bhavna, for joining and talking to us today. And with that, we would ask for a close of this session and requesting all of you to fill the feedback form and let us know how we did and what can be better. So thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Shiksha.